Pro golfer Phil Mickelson caused quite a stir last weekend for suggesting he may leave his home state of California in search of friendlier tax climbs. Voters there, you may recall, passed Proposition 30 in November, making California the state with the highest top marginal tax rate in the country. Add that to what Mickelson will pay to Uncle Sam after the fiscal cliff tax increase, and it's not hard to see why he may be shopping for a new place to live. James Freeman, Steve Moore, and Kim Strassel are back with a look at the states he may want to consider. So Phil Mickelson did the big mea culpa, said I shouldn't have got involved in tax talk. Right. Probably hurt his brand somehow. But to where should he move if he and the family decide to pack up?
Well, he's got some exciting options, and he may have even more options as more states consider getting rid of their income taxes. But the place for golfers, for athletes in general, is Florida. It has no income tax. Obviously, golf weather almost the entire year, sometimes the whole year, depending on where you live in Florida.
No estate tax.
And A-Rod has put his house on the market. So if Phil is shopping,
Alex Rodriguez.
Yes, the New York Yankees.
For some of us in
player.
Green Bay, there's another A-Rod who's more important. But we'll drop that.
So, anyway, Texas, Nevada, if he wants to go to Vegas, a lot of golf courses there. So I think this is bigger than Phil Mickelson. It's the problem California is having. They've now kicked the rate up to 13.3%. A lot of people are looking elsewhere.
Steve, there's a lot of action, tax action going on in the states, tax reform action that's pretty interesting. A lot of reform governors out there trying to even eliminate the income tax. Louisiana, Kansas, Nebraska. Tell us what's going on and why.
Yeah, it's a great story. Oh, by the way, James, 63 is a great golf score, but it ain't so good as a tax rate, and that's what Phil Mickelson is facing. So, Paul, basically the big story here is that you have a lot of these states that have been looking at what's happening in places like Texas and places like Tennessee. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee today. This is Boomtown, USA. These are states that have no income tax, and the evidence is just irrefutable that that businesses and capital and families are moving out of those high-tax states like where you live in New York, and they're moving to these no-tax states. So you've got a number of places like North Carolina, like Arkansas, like Kansas and Oklahoma, and the South and Southwest that say, we don't want to be like California, we want to be like Texas, and they are looking at eliminating their income taxes.
Okay, but Steve, what about the revenue losses? That'll be the big complaint that you're going to, if you give that up, you're going to lose revenue. How do you make it up?
Well, that's a great question. Now, a lot of these states are saying we're going to expand and maybe increase our sales tax. That's kind of politically hazardous. It hasn't worked very well in places that have tried that. But I want to toss out another idea that some states are looking at. Why not use this bonanza of money from the energy revolution that we talked a bit about earlier? Use some of that money in terms of the severance taxes that you can raise and the royalties, and use that money to replace the income tax. That's how Wyoming and Alaska got rid of their income tax.
Well, you said the swap from income to sales tax doesn't work very well. You mean politically it's difficult.
Politically.
Right. But economically it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I mean, because you're taxing consumption instead of taxing investment and work and effort.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. It's an important point. What I was saying is sometimes it's a hard sell to the people saying, when you go to the 7-Eleven or you go to the grocery store, you might have to pay a little higher tax. The problem is people saying, well, maybe I'll take the devil I know, the income tax, over the devil I don't know, these higher sales taxes.
Meanwhile, Kim, there's a movement in the opposite direction in states that are controlled by Democrats, where you see now Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick proposing a big tax increase, something similar going on in Minnesota, and that follows, of course, California, Illinois, New York, Maryland, Virginia under Mark Warner, Connecticut, and a lot of these so-called blue states, which have all raised taxes substantially in the last couple of years.
And the remarkable thing about it, Paul, is that the evidence is there about what a disastrous policy this is. You have the example of Phil Mickelson saying that he would like to look at a new place to live, and we actually have the numbers showing that this is exactly what happens when you do raise. Maryland raised its taxes on millionaires, as they called it, and the next tax year, most of those higher income job creators in the state had fled for other domains. Probably some of these states that we're talking talking about that are looking to, in fact, to decrease their income taxes. So it's the wrong direction, but these states feel as though they're under enormous budgetary pressures and that their way they're going to continue to keep spending is just to tax more.
Is this something that would give somebody like Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, who is sometimes mentioned as a presidential candidate, some real carry if he did decide to run?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's exciting to see these reform governors out there because the reformers of a couple of years ago, Chris Christie in my beloved adopted home state of New Jersey, for example, has really backed off the tax reform issue. The problem is New Jersey still has that high, almost 9% rate. It's not going to help him. But I think to the extent that Bobby Jindal comes in, he's proposing reforms on the tax side. Really could become a name in Republican primaries as people like Christie kind of recede a bit.
It's almost like the red states, you know, these Republican states in the South, they're practicing Reaganomics, Paul, and the blue states are practicing Obamanomics, where they really believe these higher taxes and the more spending on transit and education is going to create jobs. And the great thing about America is we'll see. Now we have this experiment about which of these states will prosper, and I'm going to put my money on the South.